Hey everyone, welcome back. It seems as though roster mania for this summer is coming to a close. There are still a couple rosters we're unsure of. Not 1,000% sure what's going on with Paris. Don't quite know what's happening to that NRG spot. Will they become the Huntsman or will it be sold to another org? There's a ton of question marks out there, but there have been a few announcements as of late, as well as a top 30 list from the Black Ops Cold War season that I wanted to go ahead and dive into because there might be some things that I feel are a tad bit out of place, but we'll see what you feel as well. So, as always, if you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I put out brand new videos every time there's something that drops in the Call of Duty scene, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a like. But with that, let's go ahead and look at this announcement. So this was from Toronto, and most everybody expected this, right? At the end of the Black Ops Cold War season, I thought there would have been 4 teams that stayed with their roster at the end of Black Ops Cold War. I thought Atlanta, I thought Toronto, I thought the Minnesota Rocker. Those 3 I all got right. But I also thought that Optic wouldn't have changed. Now, there is obviously no way of knowing what was coming with the Optic Envy merger and all of that. So that was a little bit out there, but I just figured when it came to that Optic roster, there wasn't a ton of moves they could make out there that would have really improved their roster had they just been a bit better prepared heading into, most notably, a lot of their search and destroy matches. Even at champs, if they perform in search, they probably go a lot further in champs, but they got absolutely dusted in those search maps, and that's just because they didn't have the preparation needed to go up against teams like the Atlanta FaZe and the Toronto Ultra. But all of that just to say that I'm happy to see that Toronto hasn't made a change. I personally really like this squad. I think this combination, it checks all the boxes, right? They have the main AR, they have the flex, 2 of the best at their position in the world. When Bance is firing on all cylinders, they have proven throughout Black Ops Cold War that they can beat or hang with anybody, and CleanX is one of those really good super aggro SMGs. So I'm glad that they are sticking together, and this is a squad that as the year went on, I found myself liking more and more, because when they win, you don't see them standing up and taunting and yelling and screaming like a bunch of children across the stage. They just don't act that way. When they win, it's on to the next one, and when they lose, you can tell that they really care. So I am stoked that Toronto is sticking together. It's a squad that I've come to really like throughout the Black Ops Cold War season, and I'm interested to see what they can do moving forward. One other note, and it's weird to even think this because the actual game isn't even out yet, so Vanguard's not even out yet, but I guess when it comes to Call of Duty 2022, does seem like it's going to be a sequel to what was out in Modern Warfare 2019. So if that's something that you enjoyed, then maybe you're happy about this. I thought Black Ops Cold War was phenomenal. I thought that the longer time to kill really opened up the skill gap when it came to competitive, when everybody dies in 2 bullets, like in the Modern Warfare engine. And by the way, we're also going to see that this year in Vanguard. The time to kill is super unbelievably fast, but when that happens, it just seems like everybody dies in 3 bullets, so the skill gap is not quite as wide. But we'll see what happens moving forward. But the thing that I wanted to talk about today was this top 30 list that was posted on the competitive COD subreddit. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my camera. And essentially, there was a poll. You had to vote for your best player, who you thought was in 2 through 10, who was in 11 through 20, who was in 21 through 30, and then those were totaled up and it gave you a total score. So as you're looking at this, I'm sure it comes as no surprise, but Simp was voted as the top player in the CDL, and that's something that I absolutely agree with, right? It seems like from the beginning to the end, Simp was one of those players. Abizi was second. I also think that is very deserving. I think if Simp wasn't in the league, Abizi does the most for his squad, especially when it comes to not only in respawns, because when you have a super aggro, really fast SMG, it seems like you're always looking at what they do in respawns, how they open up the map, how they enter when it comes to hard points. But with Abizi, he's also their biggest playmaker in terms of first blood percentage in S&D rounds, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that. So I'm super happy to see Abizi there at number 2. Obviously the most dynamic tandem in the CDL, and they just happen to be on the same squad. So Simp and Abizi 1 and 2. Again, I'm pretty happy also that Cammy's starting to get a bit of recognition. It seems like, I don't want to say for the majority of the year, but it seems like for pretty often throughout the Black Ops Cold War season, he was a player that's overlooked. Like when you look at the success of Toronto Ultra, it was, well, as soon as they made the move to bring in Insight, that's what propelled them forward, and it absolutely did. But you cannot overlook what Celium also did for that squad, or what Cammy did for that squad, because when it comes to Toronto, he was the one constantly making plays on rotations, constantly making plays in S&D. So I'm happy that Cammy's getting some recognition here. And then as we round out the top 10 here, there's only a couple names in here that surprise me a bit. Insight, definitely deserving, and then Shotzi, Scump, Standy, Hydra, and Kleenex. The one thing you're going to notice on this run of players through the top 10 is that the vast majority of what you're seeing here is all those super impactful, very fast, cracked, aggro SMG players, right? You have Simp, you have Abizi, you have Shotzi, Scump, Standy, Hydra, Kleenex, and again, what I was looking at heading into Roster Mania this summer is who's going to take a run on some of these top SMGs, because it seems as though, now I don't want to overstate this, but it seems as though once you have like your main AR, it's kind of easy to get a top tier main AR, right? There's not a ton of difference between, say, the top 6 and the bottom 6. For example, Octane was a bottom 6 in terms of what team he was on. Octane was a bottom 6 AR this year, not in terms of talent. So when it comes to getting your main AR, you can get top tier main ARs, but the problem is always getting that super impactful SMG player. And that's what you're seeing on this run throughout the top 10, is that once you get your Simp, your Abizi, your Shotzi, Scump, Standy, Hydra, Kleenex, once you have those guys, then you can build around them. So as I look at the top 10, that's my biggest takeaway. The only thing that looks maybe a little bit out of place there might be Shotzi. And I do think that Shotzi is a top 10 player. I just don't think throughout the entirety of the Black Ops Cold War season that he really showed it consistently. So maybe Shotzi's a bit too high. Maybe Scump is a top 10 player, but I don't think he's top 7. I think Standy and Hydra and Kleenex were all a bit more impactful to their squad, and especially to their squad's success, than Scump might have been. I think Scump was unbelievably good this year. I think this is one of the best seasons he's had in the last 2, 3, or 4. But to say he was better than Standy and Hydra and Kleenex might be a bit of a jump there. When it comes to 11 through 20, the names that are here, this is where you start to, I don't know, I don't have too much of an issue with these. So Dashy, Arcides, Bance, Kenny, Envoy, Clayster, Asim, Attach, Octane, Vivid. I think based on the success of the squad, maybe Octane is a bit too high, because if you are slaying but your team's not really producing because of it, then what's it really worth? But the rest of these, I mean, there's no doubt just based on talent that Octane should be up there. But every one of these guys is super imperative to the success of their team, right? You look at Bance. If Bance wasn't there, when Bance played his best is when Toronto was winning championships. To make no doubt about it. That stage 2 major, Bance had the major of his life, and they won because of it. So Bance was super impactful. Kenny, of course, was that leader on that 100 Thieves roster from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. He was that mainstay. Envoy also might be a bit high just because there were times where I think everybody would agree that this was not Envoy's best year by any means. Now, to say he should be bottom 10, I don't think that's where he was at. I just think putting him right up there with Kenny might be a tiny bit of a stretch. Asim, super impactful. Clay, super impactful. Attach, what he did for Minnesota, switching roles from the beginning to the end of the year. His willingness to bring out an AR when needed. I mean, Attach is a guy that can do it all. I'm excited to see if he gets to run a snipe next year. You have Vivid. You saw when Vivid got released from LAG, their production just shot through the floor, right? I mean, they just absolutely fell off. And as soon as Dallas picked up Vivid, that's when you started to see a revitalization of their roster. So Vivid, super impactful. Then when you get to like 21 through 30, these are the players that do have some importance in their roster, but they are not the difference makers, right? They're not the standees. They're not the Hydras. But without them, you could say that their roster maybe wouldn't have performed as high. So Draza, Neptune, Crim, Afro, Illy, Priest of Skies, Gunless, Formal, Slasher, all players that were really important to their squads, but they could be interchangeable, right? If you take Hydra off of NYSL, they don't have the run in the middle of the year that they had. If you take Standy off of Minnesota, who is another top 10 player based off of this, you take him off and they don't win that stage 5 major. It just does not happen. Now, when it comes to Priesta, for example, at number 26 there, that is also very similar. When Priesta was absolutely shredding, they showed up during the stage 5 major and during champs. So the players 21 through 30 are important, but just not as integral to their teams as 1 through 10. I don't see too much out of place here. Maybe if you look towards the end of the year, Gunless wasn't really playing great. Formal wasn't playing great. Then 31 through 40, Awakening, Major Maniac, Mac, Huke, Paul X, Scraps, Aqua, Diamond, Havoc, Pristini. These are a lot of the players that you could say are a bit interchangeable. Now, when it comes to Major Maniac, him being reinserted into the Rocker roster and having a bit more of sway in terms of he was being the IGL, that also made a ton of difference for Rocker. But the rest of these guys, Hook, for example, was on a couple different rosters, dropped a couple times. No doubt about it, he can be a top 10 player. It just didn't pan out this year. But like Paul X, Awakening, I think they're pretty similar players. Mac, Scraps, Aqua, a lot of these guys are, okay, you have your main AR, you have your slaying SMG. Now let's fill in the pieces that we need based on roles. And I think that's what you see from 31 through 40. So in the comments, let me know, do you agree with the top 10? Would you move some people around like Shotzi, maybe Arcides or Dashy or Kenny you would throw up to the top 10? Let me know down in the comments. I'll be interested to see what your rankings are and what you guys have to say. As always, if you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Anytime there's news in the CDL, I'm putting out a video. You don't want to miss things moving forward. Make sure you leave a like as it helps out the channel. And with that, thank you guys so much. We'll see you in the next upload.